was a sight for my soul.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and to a review of the most desirable Rolex on the market today. First and foremost, I want to apologize for the glare today. I am shooting over at my friend's Bernard's watch, and they have a lovely lighting here for their display, but not so great for filming. But if you're watching this video, you already know what this is. For the rare chance that somebody watching this doesn't know what this is the venerable Rolex Daytona. In particular, this is the newest version. This is the 11-6500 LN. This is the one that has the new Cerachrome bezel. And this one actually has the new Chromolite blue as well, luminescent. So this thing actually glows blue, which is pretty cool. But what makes this watch so special is this isn't just the Daytona with the ceramic bezel, which everybody's in love with. This is the coveted stainless steel version. If you guys have been following me for many years, you'll know that I actually used to own this watch. Actually, its predecessor, the 11-6520, the pre-ceramic. I have to say, looking at the ceramic version, I love the look of the ceramic with the contrast, and think the ceramic is a very nice visual pop upgrade over what I used to have. In short, though, this is the Rolex to have. This is what all the collectors are lusting after. There's very long waiting list and pretty large prices for this thing on the secondary market, and you know, it's a living legend. And it's kind of funny given that this was a Rolex model that for many years was kind of misunderstood and kind of neglected. This watch was not always called the Daytona. It was actually originally just called the Rolex Cosmograph, and it was only in about the 1970s when they added Daytona to the dial, and this thing, when it was especially associated with Paul Newman, began to finally take on a bit of a special place in the Rolex lineup. But for a long time, this was just a misunderstood watch. And throughout the years, they've really kind of created it into this just incredible magnet for all things Rolex. Back in the olden days, these things started off using basic ETA movements. And as they progressed, Zenith's venerable El Primera movement was thrown into the mix with the 40-30 movement, as Rolex termed it. And by the time I picked up one of these, I had a 2000P serial that was running the 4130, which was Rolex's first in-house chronograph movement to be placed in the Daytona, and that's actually what this current series as well is continuing to run. The 4130, when it came out, was considered a revelation. You have to remember, when it came on the market, this was pre-Breitling B01 days, and to have a movement that was a Cullen wheel escapement with a vertical clutch, at the time, in the price range when these watches first came out back in the early 2000s, was considered crazy, and that really also helped to drive some of that demand. But you know, those of you that have been looking for one of these know that finding one of these in a precious metal is usually reasonably easy. Finding the money to pay for it, maybe not so much. But buying the stainless steel one, Rolex has always kept the quantities of these far lower than the demand. And I remember back in the day when I bought my P serial version, I was told that I was going to be on a waiting list for years, or I could pay, you know, a massive premium on the used market. And dealers wouldn't let you buy one of these things new or even be waitlisted unless you were one of their special customers, typically, unless you were throwing big bucks around. Or, you know, I remember when I looked at Tourneau at the time, unless you were buying some annual calendar protects from them, they weren't really interested in talking to you about putting you on a wait list for one of these. These were waitlisted for their special customers only. So, you know, these things, at least in the last 20 years or so, have always been pretty hot, and the stainless steel one, again, is the one to have. So, the Rolex Cosmograph Daytona, those of you that are unaware, Daytona is not just a place in Florida, it is also a race. And this watch, you know, much like the Tag Heuer Monaco, is kind of geared after the automotive legends out there. And as a car aficionado myself, you know, I'm definitely one of the people in the ballpark that would fall for anything automotive related. So, you know, this watch is very much a place of automotive history, and, you know, a lot of publications, especially in automotive magazines, you'll definitely see advertisements for the Daytona in relation to Daytona the race. So at the end of the day, this is, you know, a watch that, again, has had a very unique history, and nowadays it's finally become, you know, the most coveted watch, as I said, in probably Rolex's lineup. So let's kind of talk about it, you know, features overall of what does this watch really do. Well, as I mentioned, this is running the 4130 in-house movement, and one of the ways you can decipher a 4130 movement versus an older, like Zenith El Primera movement, is the location of the center seconds. So if you have an El Primera based one with the 4030, you'll see seconds over here at 9. But anything that's been produced after 2000 is going to have the 4130 movement, and that's going to give you seconds down here at 6. And as it is a traditional chronograph, you have a 12-hour totalizer over here at 9 o'clock, and you have a 30-minute totalizer over here at 3 o'clock. The top of the dial says Rolex Oyster Perpetual Superlative Chronometer Officially Certified Cosmograph. Rolex loves to put all sorts of wordage on their dials, but all that does actually specify the watch. It is, of course, a Rolex. It is in a traditional Rolex Oyster style case. Believe it or not, Rolex does make other cases, unless you guys aren't familiar with their Cellini line, but you know, this is the definitive case for Rolex. It is officially certified chronometer, so this is keeping chronometer specs. And again, this is the Cosmograph. Again, Daytona, as you can see, is down here right above the 60-second mark. That was added to the Cosmograph line, I want to say in the mid-70s, but feel free to correct me. So it is a traditional chronograph. One omission you might notice is there is no date aperture. Especially those of you that are familiar with chronographs running like a 7750 value, you are used to seeing a date window. Rolex does not have a date window on the Daytona. I remember one thing I thought was a pet peeve when I owned one of these was that missing date, but I do have to say the balance and the symmetry of this dial, I think it does actually benefit from not having the date, at least aesthetically. It's very pleasing. I also have to say that beyond this tachometer bezel, which is great for determining speed and all sorts of other calculations, the color of it, and with the dials as well, the panda kind of dials going on here, the contrast on this watch is super, super cool. As you can see though, it's also great at picking up glare. Rolex has never been on board with anti-reflective coatings on their sapphires, and as you can see, this watch is no exception to the rule. I'm curious, my Breitling with the reflective is not quite as reflective as this guy. It's just what you deal with Rolex. So how do you start this chronograph? Well, great question. So this does have screw down crowns. It is traditional functionality where you start and stop up here at 2 o'clock and you reset down here at 4. So to start and stop it, you have to unscrew these crowns here. I'll do them both. And we'll go ahead, get it running. And there you can see the second hand's running. And what's going to happen, and again, apologies for the glare, every time it makes a complete rotation, you'll see it tick off a minute here, and after it reaches 2 30-minute totalizers, this will jump 1 hour, and this will keep track up to accumulated 12 hours of time. And to stop it, you just push down, again, the same pusher, and then down here is your reset. I'm going to go ahead and screw these back in. This does help with the 100 meters of water resistance, although I don't know anybody that would go swimming with one of these on their wrist. I certainly wouldn't risk it. So again, I mentioned this as the 4130 movement. I would love to show you what that looks like, but of course Rolex is not a fan of see-through case backs. The 4130 movement, again, is all in-house. It's a 44 joule movement. It has a 72-hour power reserve, which for a watch with these complications is considered pretty admirable. It is a column wheel, which means that you have a very smooth engagement, and I'll go ahead and just show you that again. You'll see how the second hand just smoothly glides. It doesn't jerk. If this was a traditional cam system, you would actually see a jerk when you start the chronograph. So if I give you an example on mine, which is a cam, I guess this isn't going to show it, but what you typically would see is you'll see a jerking motion. When you do a column wheel, the machining is more expensive to do, and so they're a more expensive complication, but what you tend to see is a lot more smoothness with the start and stop of the chronograph. You don't get that kind of jittery look. It's typically something you'd associate with a higher end watch. You'd see a column wheel of a Patek Philippe, for example. This also does have the parachrome hairspring in it, which is good. It's got anti-magnetic properties, so it will definitely keep the watch more accurate if it gets exposed to some sort of magnetic force. And I believe the movement overall has about 201 pieces, and Rolex, when they designed this movement, serviceability was something they had in mind. The El Primero, which was used in the previous version of these watches, was known for being kind of a pain to service, and it was a higher beat movement that Rolex had intentionally detuned to a lower beat. Speaking of beats, again, this watch is 28,800. Size-wise, the watch is about 40 millimeters, and I mean, again, just checking that out, I love kind of the panda look on this watch. You are going to, of course, get the traditional Rolex marked crown. This has 3 dots, which indicates this is a triplet crown. Functionality-wise, you don't set anything other than the minute and hour hands here, so I'll just show you how to do that. You unscrew it. First position is winding. And then second position, which would usually be to set the date, actually sets the watch. You'll see that the second hand stops because the movement is hacking. And of course we can go ahead and set the time, and I'll do the traditional 10 to 2, which is where they always like to photograph these things. But yeah, I mean, it has the solidarity of a Rolex you would expect. The watch is actually pretty lightweight, which is kind of nice, and it's a slimmer case, so you're not going to feel like a Rolex deep sea kind of heft on your wrist. It's much more wearable. You could easily slide this under a shirt cuff. Comes on a traditional Rolex Oyster style bracelet. Center links are polished, outer links are brushed. Kind of adds a little bit more elegance to it. This does have, of course, the current generation of Rolex flip lock. Got the little Rolex crown. You can put your finger under there. There is this articulation here to lift up the clasp. And there is, of course, the nice Rolex marked clasp there. There also is an easy adjustment lock here, but this still has some plastic on it, so I'm not going to play with it. But it is very easy to adjust some slack in the bracelet, which is nice if you live in a place that's humid and you have to have worry about your wrist getting swelled up in the summer. So there it is, guys. It's an absolutely beautiful watch. Again, I was a former owner of one of these, and I clearly missed the mark because I should have kept mine longer. But let me go ahead and just give you a quick little wrist shot, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So we'll go ahead and just slide this on my wrist here. And for comparison's sake, it's next to my Breitling Navitimer, which is about 41.5. So you can see the Rolex at 40 looks slightly smaller, but again, you have that beautiful contrast. It's a very elegant watch. Women could wear this as easily as men, and I think anybody that owns this watch, obviously, is going to be very pleased to have this on their wrist. So there you go, guys. Thanks again to my friends at Bernard Watch for always finding me these really cool watches that are hard to come by. This stainless steel Daytona is not a watch you see every day. Indeed, it's pretty rare, and I know several of you guys watching this are probably on a waiting list waiting for yours to come in, so I think you'll be pretty pleased when it does come in. As always, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and with all that said, let's go ahead and we'll jump back. All right, guys, thank you so much for checking out that video. It was, pretty cool actually to see a watch that I sold many years ago, only in a slightly newer and improved version. I have to admit that I do kind of regret selling my Rolex Daytona, especially given how the market has changed. But again, thanks to my friends at Bernard Watch for letting me check it out. I really, really appreciate it. It's for sale on their website as of the time I'm shooting this. BernardWatch.com. If you like that watch, they're going to have plenty of other cool ones out there. And of course, I'm going to keep checking out their inventory. But again, thanks so much. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys think these watches are worth the huge premiums they're commanding lately? It's absurd. I think the retail on these is about 12 grand. Bernard's on the cheap end for what they're asking for theirs right now, but I've seen these well into the low 20s, which is just mind-boggling to me. But it is a great watch. It's a great movement, and again, really cool. I got to check it out. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you can catch me in the next video, and also click the bell icons. That way you guys know when I shoot these new videos, because I know I'm not exactly the best at putting them out as frequently as I used to, but I'm going to work on that. Also, again, thanks so much to all you guys that have checked out my new motivational speaking channel, Coach J. Anthony. Link below and link to the latest video near me. I've gotten tremendous response from you guys. I really, really appreciate that, and thank you for helping me support that new passion of mine. That is just something that it means the world to me. So always, I've talked too much. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.